They said it was God's will, but 4-year-old Sandra could not understand why her parents never came back home. Sandra was only 4 years old when her life changed forever. It was a Sunday morning. The sun was shining, and her mother had dressed her in a pink gown with white socks and little black shoes. She sat at the back of the car with her teddy bear, laughing as her father whistled and her mother hummed a song. They were on their way from Enugu to their village in Anambra to see her grandmother. But they never made it. A speeding trailer lost control on the highway and crashed into their car. Her father died on the spot. Her mother passed away at the hospital. Sandra was found unconscious, holding her teddy bear on her small forehead. She survived, but everything else was gone. After the funeral, her father's younger sister, Aunt Esther, took her in. At first, Sandra thought she would be safe. Aunt Esther lived in a small bungalow in Onitsha with her husband and 3 children. But from the first night, Sandra felt like she didn't belong. She was given an old mat to sleep on in the passage beside the kitchen door. The mat had holes and smelled of kerosene. Her cousins had proper beds and pillows. In the morning, she was woken up before everyone else. Go and fetch water. Aunt Esther shouted. She had to carry a heavy yellow jerrycan to the borehole 2 streets away. She washed clothes, scrubbed the bathroom, and cleaned the entire house. Her small hands were always tired. Sometimes her fingers cracked from washing too many clothes with strong soap. Her back hurt from bending too long. But if she rested, her aunt would flog her with a kaboko. Her food was usually the burnt part of the rice or soup with no meat. If visitors came, she would be sent to the backyard until they left. Her cousins called her Sandra the orphan and laughed when she wore old, torn clothes. Nobody bought her new clothes or shoes. If she got sick, they gave her paracetamol and told her to keep walking. But Sandra loved school. It was the only place she felt like a child again. She was quiet in class but very smart. She always answered questions and finished her homework on time. Her teacher, Mrs. Nena, noticed her. One day, during open day at school, her aunt didn't come. She took her to Mrs. Lucy and handed Sandra over to her. The next day, Mrs. Lucy brought her food and sat with her under a mango tree. Sandra, are you okay at home? She asked. Sandra looked down and nodded. But tears dropped from her eyes. Mrs. Lucy didn't ask more questions, but she started helping Sandra. She brought her books, extra food, and sometimes even soap and underwear. When Sandra was 13, Mrs. Lucy told her about a scholarship for orphans who were doing well in school. Sandra took the exam and passed with the highest score in the whole local government. When the scholarship was announced, Aunt Esther was not happy. She frowned and said, "So you want to carry your head up like you're better than us?" But Sandra stayed calm. She quietly packed her few clothes, a faded school uniform, an old wrapper, a worn-out slipper, and her teddy bear. Then she left with Mrs. Lucy. She was moved to a boarding school run by the Scholarship Foundation. For the first time in years, she had her own bed, clean clothes, and enough food. She worked hard and passed all her exams. After secondary school, the foundation helped her enter nursing school. She chose to become a nurse because she remembered the woman who lifted her out of the car wreck many years ago. That nurse had wiped her blood and held her hand when everyone else was crying. Sandra wanted to be that kind of person for others. By the time she was 25, Sandra had become a qualified nurse. She saved her salary for 2 years and returned to the village, not to complain, but to help. She bought a piece of land and built a small bungalow with 4 rooms. She called it Mama and Papa's place, a home for orphan girls like her. Every child in that home had a soft bed, clean clothes, enough food, and someone to talk to. Sandra treated them with love, the kind of love she had missed growing up. She forgave Aunt Esther, but she never went back to live with her. Sandra's life was full of pain, but she never gave up. She turned her pain into strength. And even as an adult, she still kept her old teddy bear, her last memory of her parents and her reminder that she survived. One day, many years later, Sandra got a call from someone in her old neighborhood. "Your aunt." "Aunt Esther," the voice said quietly. "She's not well. Her husband left her, and she's been very sick." Sandra sat still. She hadn't thought about Aunt Esther in a long time. Memories came rushing back, how she was beaten, starved, and mocked. How she had cried herself to sleep on a torn mat while her cousins laughed. But she also remembered something else, how far she had come. She was no longer that helpless little girl. She had the power to choose what kind of woman she wanted to be. The next day, Sandra traveled to Onitsha. The same streets looked smaller now. The house she once lived in looked old and broken. She knocked. The door opened slowly. Her cousin Daniel stood there. His eyes widened. "Sandra, you came." "I heard about Aunt Esther," she said calmly. They let her in. Her aunt was lying on a mat in the parlor. Her legs were swollen. Her skin looked pale and tired. She was no longer the strong, loud woman Sandra remembered. When Aunt Esther saw her, tears filled her eyes. "I didn't expect to ever see you again," she whispered. Sandra knelt beside her. She took her hand. "It was rough and cold. I'm not here to judge you," Sandra said. "I just came to help. But, after everything I did to you?" "You did wrong," Sandra said, softly but firmly. "You hurt me. You made me feel unloved. But I chose to forgive you long ago, for my own peace." Aunt Esther cried. For the first time, she didn't argue or shout. She just cried. Sandra paid for her to be taken to a good hospital. She arranged for medicine, food, and a caregiver. She didn't do it because she had forgotten the pain. She did it because she had healed from it. Weeks later, Aunt Esther began to walk again. She sent a message to Sandra. "Thank you. I now understand what love really means." Sandra didn't go back to live with her, but she checked in from time to time. She wanted her to know that change was possible, even for someone who once did wrong. Years later, when Aunt Esther passed away, Sandra attended the burial. She didn't speak as the orphan girl anymore. She stood as a strong woman, known and respected. Some of the people who once ignored her came to shake her hand and say, "Well done."